computer. I got that started. Okay. All right, because I stopped the recording as we were chatting about everything else in the world. So the recording started now. Okay, we're going to start this workshop off again by talking about getting files from Lightroom. You're seeing Lightroom here. If on Lightroom, you know that you can select several pictures by holding down, say, the Shift key. If I go hit this picture and hit all the way over here, it selects all those pictures, right? Or if I hit up here and hit down the last picture and hit Shift key, it selects all those pictures. The reason I'm telling you this is if I right click on a picture and I say edit in Photoshop, I don't want to do that right now because it's going to open every single one of those pictures as a separate file in Photoshop, and it's going to take forever. So when you have pictures selected on your screen, be careful that you don't have 300 pictures selected or something like this, because I've done that, and every photographer I know has done that, and then had to crash their computer or something. You can't open 300 pictures in Photoshop very easily, or it doesn't like it. So be careful. Open them one at a time or two at a time or something. But say if I want to open a picture, typically, I will open this picture. Let's say I want to open two pictures. Okay, so I'll open this picture and that picture there. I can now go to edit. I think it's edit or photo. Yeah, photo, edit in, in Photoshop. You can see I have some other things. We're not talking about those today. I can open as layers in Photoshop. I could bring them both in on top of each other, or I could bring them in separately. But let's just bring them in Photoshop, okay? Another way to get to the same menu is if I go down here and right click on them. I just right clicked on it. I can go say, okay, edit in Photoshop. Okay, so now I'm editing in that Photoshop. You see I have two pictures that I'm opening here. They're going to open up in Photoshop in a second if my computer is nice to me. Okay, Photoshop work. Oh, there you are, behind me.
When you right click on the picture, what comes up? I'm sorry.
Well, you'll see they'll open in Photoshop, and that's what they're doing right now. It's going to take a second. My computer, for some reason, has gotten real slow today.
Right click just gives you a drop down menu, he said.
Yeah, okay. if you go to right click, it just gives you drop down menu. It's a fast way of doing the same thing that the top menu does. So it is opening. I get little progress bars moving here. There you go. There's one open, and remember there were two that I opened. The reason I want to show you that I opened two is you can open several pictures in Lightroom, and they open up in tabs. Okay, and this is Photoshop. I'm sorry. So they open up and they open up in tabs. All right. If I were to close this down, don't save, and don't save. If I were to do the same thing, I'm going to right click on this time. So I do the same thing. I'll right click on it. I'm going to edit in Photoshop, but I'm going to say open as layers in Photoshop. Okay. Instead of doing just edit in Photoshop, I'm doing editing as layers. So I'm doing the same thing, opening in Photoshop, but this time, instead of opening up in tabs next to each other like they did last time, you'll see they open up on top of each other. Here over on the right-hand side, there's going to be two layers, okay? So I turn one layer off, you can see they're on top of each other. So there's different reasons why you would want to open them as layers, and we'll talk about layers later. We won't get into layers, but to get photos into Photoshop, I'm not going to save any of these things here. You can just go up to here to go back to photos.
Let me back up. Oh.
Okay, I'm sorry, go ahead.
I was going to say, let me back up just a minute. One choice was to right click on the picture and on the drop down menu, choose Photoshop, and it opens in tabs. And then the second way was in that drop down menu, what do you choose?
Open as layers in Photoshop.
Open as layers. Okay.
See, so if you look at my screen right now, instead of the right click, I went to the top menu. I did the same thing. Okay, the right click just gives you this fast way to get to this other menu. So if you look at the screen right now, I've got it says Lightroom Photo, edit in Adobe Photoshop. Now, if I have two pictures selected, they're going to open as two pictures, right? If I did open as layers, they would be on top of each other. Now, normally you're going to edit this way. You're going to just open in Photoshop this way. Okay, so that would be the fastest and easiest way to do that, right? So let me see, drag it. Well, no, there's another way to do it too. But if I go to Photoshop, and some people like, let's just open Photoshop by itself over here. And if you're not a Lightroom user and you just want to open something in Photoshop, I've got Photoshop open here, right? I'm going to get my let's see, my file manager open here. This is my file manager. Mm-hmm. I can go to my I don't know, wherever I want to go here. Stop
pictures.
Yeah,
pictures.
I can get I don't know what right now it's giving me a little spinning death doll. Okay, I can grab a picture here and just drag it in. Okay.
Oh.
And it'll open the picture. So one way, that's another way of doing it. I can just drag the picture into Photoshop and it'll open if it ever decides to open it.
And where did you start again?
So what I did here is I went to my file manager. You know, now I'm looking. This is an Apple, okay? So the file manager is going to look a little different.
Explorer, I think is.
Explorer, I think is what it's called in Windows. You just find the picture you want and drag it into Photoshop. It works that way, okay? So if you're going from Lightroom, you can do edit, you know, do that edit in Photoshop. If you're going to, you can just drag it in if you want. You know, that's the second way I would bring it in. All right. So that's an easy way to do it. And of course, the standard way would be if I close this file here. I mean, you can go. I'm in Photoshop now, right? I can go to File. Come on, File, Open Recents. If I've opened some recent ones here, right? Or I can say Open. You know, Browse and Bridge if I have that, or I can just say Open here, and it'll open up my file manager like you saw before, and then I can find my file and open them there, just like you would in any other. Here I can say I find that file there, open that one. Okay, so that there's different ways of getting files into Photoshop. If you're just using Photoshop and not using Lightroom and stuff, you'd probably use this way up here, File Open.
Right.
Or if you're using Bridge, you could use Bridge that way. I don't use Bridge. So that's the typical way you would get files in that I can think of. I got looking at my thing. Is there any other way? No, I can't think of any other way.
Mine doesn't have, I don't go to File up at the top left. It just has Open. And you can open there, and then your files come up, and you choose the file that you want and select pictures from there.
So it's very similar to this.
Yes, you just don't have to do it from File.
Okay. Okay. Yeah. And the other thing that's interesting too is if I were to open, I'll just say I were to open three pictures here. Let me get. I'm going to go to Edit in Photoshop. Once you get several pictures open in Photoshop, they open this will open the tabs. There are going to be 3 tabs on this one. Mm-hmm. Okay. Let's say I want to make a composite with this bird, and I was going to put the bird in the middle of the desert or something. So I wanted to open all 3 pictures. But when you get these files open in Photoshop, as soon as it comes up here, you'll see now that there are different tabs here.
Right.
Okay. So you can see there's one that I had before and I didn't close. There's one, and there's one. I can change these tabs around if I want. I can change the order of the tabs. So Photoshop, you can drag just about anything around and drive yourself nuts. I can also detach the tab.
What is the point of changing the tabs around?
Well, if I don't know. you think but
sometimes if you're building on something and you want them in a certain order, so you can pull from them in a certain order.
But you can see I just pull them apart too, like this, you know. So I can, you know, and then I can go back and put them back. See that little blue line that in Photoshop tells you that, you know, things are coming back together there. So anyway, let's not save these things and close them out and go back to Lightroom, because I'm going to talk about configuring Lightroom and Photoshop so they talk well together. I'm going to close that. Go back to Lightroom here.
Jeff,
go ahead.
Do you typically start in Lightroom by opening the photo?
Yeah, this won't be a Lightroom class, but yes, my workflow is to start in Lightroom, edit the heck out of it as best as I can do it, and then jump over to Photoshop. Okay.
Yeah, okay. Just want to make sure that's where you start, because I just loaded Lightroom. I'm kind of liking that way. Okay, good.
Yeah, so no, that's my typical way of doing it. I think most people do it that way. And I'm going to talk a little bit about opening as a smart object in a second to help you with that workflow. Okay. So let's just, now we know that Lightroom and Photoshop are talking back and forth to each other. They work together. Okay. These two things, Photoshop and Lightroom work together. There are certain things you might think about, and if you don't have to do any of this and it's not going to hurt you, they'll work together. Okay. But if you think about it, first of all, if I would go to Lightroom, for example, and hit Lightroom preferences and bring up the preferences thing here, external editing here, you'll see it, the primary external editing by default is going to pick Photoshop. So Photoshop set up. I'm using a second external editor, so I can set up a second one here as Luminar. Okay. So for example, in Lightroom, if I do shortcut Command E, for example, if I'm doing a picture down here, this one picture, let's say I go to one picture and I hit Command E or Control E on a Mac. So if I hit Command E, that'll open it up in Photoshop for me automatically. That's a shortcut. There, see, that opened it up. That's just a shortcut way of doing it. So if I go to Lightroom Preferences, go back to File Handling, this here works with Command E, and this works with Option Command E. You know, if you remember shortcut, those things help to have those set up. The other thing you might think about setting it up is the file format is I'm using a PSD. I think if you do nothing else, I think it does TIFF. I use PSD because that's what Photoshop's native. That's its format. That's what it uses. I'll use Photoshop's format. It's, I think, a little bit more compressed than a TIFF file also. The reason I put it ProPhoto RGB here, and that's not their default. Their default, I think, is Adobe RGB. Is Lightroom uses ProPhoto RGB. So
what's RGB?
RGB is red, green, blue, and RGB is a standard for color in photos. And when you look at all photos, they're made up of red, green, and blue. They're just different mixtures of red, green, and blue. So RGB stands for that. So ProPhoto is actually the widest, broadest color gamut you can use. It has for example, if you use sRGB, sRGB is what a lot of iPhones shoot and stuff like that. It's good for internet, Facebook, and all that kind of good stuff. The colors aren't as true, but they're good. If you're a real professional and sticky about it, ProPhoto is what you should be using. And since Lightroom uses ProPhoto, what the heck, why not use it? And so 16 bits is going to be there, and 240 is good enough too. You think, why not? If I'm going to print, I want it higher than 240, maybe, but you can do that when you go to print. You know, this is the 240 is the standard that exists and going back and forth, and it works fine. So that's, and I'd set up Luminar to do the same thing. So this is one setup feature you might think about using. Okay, that would, again, if you don't do anything, it's still going to work fine.
What is the PSD file format, sorry?
This PSD, that's Adobe Photoshop's file format. It's the it has layers.
Okay. It's not related to JPEG or.
Well, JPEG's a file format that's a flattened, compressed file.
Right.
And so JPEGs are a flat file compressed. PSD is it's not a RAW file. The RAW files are things like NEF files, and I don't know what Canon calls theirs.
Right.
And so those are RAW files. A PSD is a format that's used by Photoshop, and it contains the layers and everything in it.
Okay, all right.
So you don't lose your layers.
Yeah, you don't lose your layers.
When you close the folder, you can still find them when you go back that you have to put in the middle of work.
And so we'll get into layers and all that kind of stuff later, but typically PSD files are good. If you look behind my window here, you'll see some PSD files. Now, see, for example, DNG is a RAW file. PSD file, this is this file edited. This is a file that Chris Summers gave it. So this is Chris's original file. I edited, now it's a PSD file. Okay.
Thank you. Yeah.
So that's so typically I would use PSD files because that's sort of the standard. You just look at yours. You don't, again, if you don't change that, it's not going to kill you. It's going to work fine. And on the other side, since Photoshop has to pick up your files and go back and forth, now I'm looking at Photoshop here. I would start by going to I think it's image color. Let's see, edit color settings. Edit color settings. Edit color settings. And these color settings are going to be, I'm going to say Workspace Pro Photo, because it's coming over from Lightroom and Pro Photo. I want it to be Pro Photo here. And then color management, preserve embedded profiles. And then down here, missing profiles. If a file comes over with something that's not Pro Photo up here, you want it to warn you. Hey, say this is not Pro Photo. Do you want to change it? You want to keep it what it is. Again, it's not going to kill you if it doesn't warn you. Photoshop will make a decision and put it whatever it feels like putting it into. I guess it's probably going to put it into Pro Photo if it can. But anyways, those are some of the ones that are recommended from places I've looked at.
One thing you may notice is that when you start getting into layers and you're copying something from one photograph into a different photograph, that they need to be similar color.
And it might tell you, that's where you get the warning, right, Emily? It'll tell you, oh, be careful, this one doesn't match that one, you know? And usually it's not a problem. You say, that's okay, fine, you know, and it doesn't matter. If you're super professional making millions of dollars off your photographs, it might matter. So let's see, color edit, and then the other would be going up to preferences.
And all of these color settings are for when you're going back and forth from Lightroom to Photoshop?
Yeah, Lightroom to Photoshop. It's just
and you get to the color settings by starting at image?
Yeah, image, no, I'm sorry, edit and color settings. This is in Photoshop, okay?
Right, but from edit, okay, thank you.
Edit Photoshop. And then if I do Photoshop preferences, okay, I can go down to file handling and look at, and I'm just checking to see that what goes back and forth is compatible, okay? And it'll file handling, let's see what else. I'm just checking my notes here. File handling, maximize PSD, that's what I think is important here. Maximize PSD and PSB compatibility. I have it set as always. You want it to be compatible between the applications. I don't know why they wouldn't maximize it, but just make sure it is. So that's so always I just have that. I have that one there. Also, I asked before saving a layered TIFF file. You know, TIFF files can also have layers in them too, but then they're huge files. So I always have it. If I'm going to save a TIFF file layered, I want it to tell me that it's layered so I can make a decision to flatten it if I want to. But that gets into layers later on. So the lesson here is how to get, getting back and forth between Lightroom and Photoshop. There's several ways of doing it. You can go through and check your preferences and stuff to make sure that everything is nice. Even if you don't do that, it'll work. Adobe built these two things and they'll work together fine, okay? So that's probably, any questions on getting back and forth? Okay, because I'm going to get into looking at a file here. I'll keep this one open here. And if you'll look at this particular screen, which is Photoshop, I'm going to take this off here. That's Photoshop. You'll notice different things. There's a menu up above here. Now I'm using a Mac again, and that may not look exactly like everybody's. And certainly, Ellen, you using Elements is going to look slightly different. But there is a set of commands up above here. There's a toolbar down this side over here, which Emily's going to get into about later. This is a powerful set of tools. This could be 3 workshops. Yeah. I mean, some of these tools on selections, for example, you could have a whole class on selections. Okay, so there's a lot of stuff in here. Emily's going to dive into that a little later on. Okay, and we
may need another workshop on that.
Oh, we will. This is a promise to you guys. We're going to get you all to become gurus, like Ellen's going to become. Right, Ellen? We'll all become gurus here, and so we're going to go as slow as we have to make you guys understand this stuff. So these tools, every time I click on one of these different tools here, you'll see there is another menu bar up here. And Ellen will get into that. It changes with the options for every one of these tools, okay? So there's a menu bar up here, there's the toolbar down here, and there's this little menu bar across here that changes every time I click on a tool, okay? So those things. And then there's all this junk on the right-hand side over here. If some of you guys came in and say, for example, hey, I want to see this little drop down up here, you can select what you get over here based on different presets, if you will. So I'm going to go to Essentials here, see, because Essentials sounds like something I should have, right?
Yep.
My God, look at all this stuff. Do I really want my space taken up by all these menus and stuff like that? I don't. I mean, this is garbage. I don't want Essentials, okay?
I'm going to interrupt just a minute. I need to go pick up a toy that my dog is playing with because it's driving me nuts and I can't hear it. I'll be right back.
You take your time. You take your time. You're okay. Dogs, I love them. Love dogs.
So I have a question.
Yeah, sure. Yes.
I noticed that you're recording this. Would this be available for later?
Yes, I'll put it up on YouTube and give you a link.
Oh, that'd be great because I might have need to step out earlier.
Yeah, then that's fine. I mean, this will be available.
Perfect.
Okay.
Thank you.
Sure.
Has treats inside of it. And it's hard.
If we want to give the link to a non-club member, can we do that?
Yeah, go ahead. I put it up on YouTube and it's public.
Okay.
But what I want to tell you is you can change your workspace here by selecting different options here. There's Essentials, which gives you this big, awful workspace. It minimizes your pictures small and all your space is taken up by these other things. You can go down, and the best place to start is probably photography, right? So I'll hit photography, and it gives me a different setup here, okay? That's a good place to start, but you can even simplify this more. Remember, I told you can drag stuff around. There's things even on this menu here that I think are too much. For example, I never use a histogram and never use a navigator. So I'll take the histogram. You see I'm dragging it out here and pulling it away from it. I've taken the histogram, put a little X on it, got rid of the histogram. Navigator, don't want the navigator, got rid of the navigator. Libraries and adjustments, I use that. You might not use libraries, I do in Adobe. But if you didn't, you could pull it out and get rid of it. Adjustments, you'll definitely want to use. I got layers, channels, and paths here. That's pretty cool. I've got history up here. I know what I'll do is I'll take the history and see I'm dragging it down and joining it down there with my paths. Okay. I've got actions here and I'll leave that. I don't need info. I don't need cloning stamp, whatever the hell that is. I don't need. So this is the way my desktop looks. And if I go, once you get your desktop modified like this, hey, I think Bill got here.
He's trying to get it from San Francisco.
Let me get Bill set up here first so we can hear.
He's trying to get out of the fog.
Okay. All right.
He and the golfers were lost in the fog.
Yeah, that's right. The point is once you've sort of got your workspace set up the way you want it, and I do recommend that you simplify, right? You don't really need all that stuff. It's going to drive you nuts. Simplify the workspace here. There's one other thing I guess to put on there. Hey, Bill, I'm going to mute you for a second. Okay. Okay. I can't hear.
You've taken them off. How do you get them back on?
He gets himself back on by unmuting.
Once you've taken the properties off of the workspace, how do you get them back on? You just deleted a lot of the options there.
Yeah, I took a bunch of stuff. Let me go back. You'll see that I have something called My Workspace up here on top. Okay. This is the way I usually set up my workspace. I have adjustments, properties, and libraries. And down here, I've got layers, channels, paths, and history. Okay.
And if you take too many off, how do you put them back on?
And then if you want to put stuff back on, you go up to Windows up here. And whatever I want. So remember I took Navigator off? Okay, I'll put Navigator back on again. There's Navigator. Oh, I like Navigator right up here at the top somewhere. You know, which is nonsense, but I can put it up there if I want to. What the navigator does is if I'm zooming in on the picture here, it tells me where I am, so I can zoom around. I mean, it's a nice little feature, you know. So you can see what I'm doing on the top, and I'm zooming the picture around the navigator. I don't use it, okay? So I would take it off and click it off, okay? So that's the, I mean, that's my own setup. So I've got something I've called my workspace. The way you would do that, if I go back to photography here, this is the way it remembers the last things you did. So this is not the photography workspace that you saw before. If I wanted to create this as a workspace, I would go like that, and I'd say new workspace, and then I would save it, call it my workspace or something, you know? So if you want to create a workspace and modify it and simplify and get rid of a lot of that stuff, create your own workspace, say new workspace, and you've got it. What I'm going to do now is reset photography, because remember I changed all those things. I'll reset photography back to what it was before. This is the standard.
May I ask a question?
Yes.
So you're saying that we need to save the workspace. So after you make all these changes, the software will not memorize your changes?
It will. It will.
Okay.
So when I started off with photography here, right? And this is what it looks like. I can say to myself, hey, I don't want that. I don't want that one. You know, I'll keep these. Sorry, get rid of that. Go. I'll keep these like that. I'll keep that like that. But I'll take this history, and I'll put it down over here. And I'll take the properties, and I'll put them up over here. In fact, maybe I'll move the properties over here to the first one, and I'll move libraries over there. So you can move these things around. I'll leave these over here. I don't need this, and I don't need that. Okay, now if I leave this alone, and I go off and look at, say, essentials, and I go back to photography, it's going to be the way I just did it. Okay, it remembers. The only thing is I can make it even remember better by saying, you know, create a new workspace, and I'm going to bring this new workspace over here, and I'm going to call it workshop workspace. Okay, and I can save that now. So now if I go up here, I've got workshop workspace or my workspace, and I've got the old photography workspace, which is actually going to stay the way it was unless I reset it. I can reset photography back to its default. So if you ever screwed up, just reset it back to where it was and then do it again. And if you want something that's not there, you can always go up to Window and find it here. If you do a lot of things with video, for example, you'll want this timeline on there. If you do a lot of graphics things, you'll want some of these paragraph things on here, which I have on my workspace. I have some things over here on paragraph and things like that. So if I go to my workspace, you'll see I've got brushes over here. I've got the brush settings, characters, because I do some graphic things, we use characters and things like that. So, you know, the point is you can simplify the workspace. You don't have to accept what's there. And I'd suggest getting rid of some of that stuff if you're not going to use it. And later on, if you want to use it, go to Windows, you know, heck, clone source. I don't know, clone source. I want to do clone source. That's great. I don't know why I want to do clone source, but I'll put it right here. Now you'll notice that these are collapsed menus and these are uncollapsed. If I want to uncollapse those, see that little arrow up above? I can open up those menus there. Okay, so these are actions here, brushes. So I can open all these things up, or I can collapse them. Normally I keep those collapsed. I can do the same thing here. I can collapse these. So here's layers and things like that. So, but normally I keep it in this mode right here. Okay, so that's sort of a lesson trying to configure your. Hey Bill, I muted you for a second, Bill. If you want to get back on, you can unmute. Sorry about that. Okay. So so that's sort of a lesson in setting up your workspace before you start anything else. Just simplify, get rid of some of the junk you're not going to use, right?
And most of that was under properties.
Well, no, the things that I have set up right now, for example, is layers down here, which you'll use a lot, but we won't get into today. Channels you may not use. I use them a lot when I'm doing some different things. Paths, I'll bet you don't ever use them. I've used them for some graphic design things. And history you use a lot, because whatever I do to this thing here, if I go around doing some different, I'll just do some random stuff on here. I'm not going to tell you what I'm doing. Just do a bunch of random stuff. You can see it starts to create a history over here of what I'm doing. Okay.
Okay. So otherwise, over there on that sidebar on the right, you go through adjustments and properties and all of that. You go through each one of those and take out the things that you don't use.
Yeah. And okay. If we get into this, you'll see that there's adjustments here for doing photography editing, right? But typically, these are for doing them on layers down here. So anything I do here is going to show up on a layer down here. I will show you how to do those same adjustments that you see over here. You go to image adjustments, and there they are there. So you can do a lot of editing without going to layers. Okay, a lot of editing. We'll talk about that today. We'll talk about layers in the future. Okay, so there's a lot of things you can do to a picture without going to layers.
So it was mainly in properties that you were taking things out?
No, it wasn't. It wasn't. Let me go back. No, it's okay. It's okay. Let's go to photography. Okay, this is the standard photography setup. Okay, you'll notice that properties in this particular one is set up over here.
Oh, okay.
So what's here is histogram, navigator, libraries, adjustments, layers, channels, and paths. Okay, and I'm just looking at things like I'm not going to use histograms. Okay,
you're not going to use histograms because you probably used it already in Lightroom.
True.
To do all of your color balancing and all the rest of that, right?
True. And then there's a lot of tools that, for example, if I use layer levels, for example, guess what? There's a histogram there. So yeah. So I'll show you that later. But I mean, there's a lot of other histograms. I don't need that one. Navigation, I don't use it. So I will just drag navigation off. And so now I've left with libraries, adjustments. I do use these. Okay, I use libraries. You may not use libraries, okay? So drag it off and get rid of it right now. That's something that's a little advanced. But I like to put my properties panel is pretty darn important. So I'm going to put properties up here. And I'll put it right next to adjustments. A second, let me go back up here. Properties, I'll just move it over there. Properties is important. Adjustments is important. Libraries. History I like. You can leave history right here. It's not a problem. Or you can just put it down here. Okay, I like it down there. So all I did is move some stuff around. Then I got rid of some other stuff that I'm not using. Just to make this super, super simple. Okay.
Okay. So it really was taken from kind of all over that.
Yeah. So I was just cleaning up is all I was doing. Okay. And so I ended up with a workspace that I like. And if I forgot something, I go back, oh gosh, I remember used to have this thing. Where is it? You know, go back over here to Windows, click on whatever it is, like a histogram or whatever you want it to do. And say, okay, oh gee, I want a histogram. Where do I put that thing? Let's see, I can put it over here, you know. And so you can put stuff back in there all you want. That stuff doesn't go away.
Okay.
It's all there. It's just all I did is my starting point is simpler now. It's cleaner. It's someplace that for me is more comfortable. It's the things that I use.
And not so overwhelming.
Yeah, not so overwhelming. I mean, if you're brand new at this, you say, I think essentials would be good, right? I want to do essentials. Whoa, man. Do I really want to do essentials? Let's go back to this. No, that's just too much. Look at that stuff. What do I want to use here? There's adjustments and properties and swatches and gradients and all this stuff here. There's a bunch of learning over here. And this is some training. This is good. Maybe I want to keep that. So that's my point. You don't want to get yourself overwhelmed. So I'm going to go back to my workspace. Okay. So that's sort of, to my mind, that's an important thing. The other thing that's interesting too is there's a lot of shortcuts in here. If you want to learn shortcuts, if I want to know what a crop tool is, that little crop tool is C. See where it says crop tool C right here. So if I want to know what some of these selection tools are, lasso tools L, these things, I don't know all the shortcuts, but I know some of them. For example, I know brushes is B. If I want to get a brush quickly, I hit B. Okay. If I want to crop, I hit C. And also up here, if you go to the file menus up above and start going down here, you'll see a lot of shortcuts. Okay. So these are important little shortcuts. All right. So those are, if you ever want to know shortcuts, they're all out there. There's also places you can go on the internet and ask for lists of shortcuts, and they'll tell you those. Just see if there's anything else. Left, top. I think that's about it there. I'm getting down to this, Emily. We'll get to yours in a second. I'm going to go across some of the top menu items up here on the very top, because there's a lot I can do to this picture here and edit it just using some of the things up here. You know, Photoshop over here is just going to tell you some things like preferences and things like that. File, there's some interesting things in this file here. Of course, you can do the opening that we just talked about and closing files, or save and save as. When I open a file in Lightroom, from Lightroom, and then I save a file, for example, if I take this file here, and let's just say let's go File, Save. Now I've saved this file here. Save, it says 93%. It's saved. It's called 1920 something. If I go back to Lightroom now, you're not going to see it here, but let me go back to the folder where it was. Folder in the library. This is a collection set in Lightroom. So you're going to, whenever it comes up down here, it's going to end up right next to the old one. This is the one that I edited in, let's come on. It's taking a while to come back. Let's go. Grid view, there you go. Okay, this is, now it's, you see this is the one I brought into Photoshop, which is a raw file. When I saved it, it just put the saved file as a separate file right next to the other one. And this was a PSD file. Remember I told it I wanted PSD files, okay? I didn't do anything to it, so it looks the same, but it's right next to the old one. Now, if you can't find it, if you say, gee, I can't find it, it was right next to it. Well, this is by capture time. If I had this sorted by something else, like oh, I don't know, order added, then I'm going to say, gee, that file is not next to the other one. Well, this one is next to the other one. It made a liar out of me. But typically, if you can't find it, it's because you're sort of it should be by capture time, and then they'll be together. Okay, so when you go into Photoshop and you save it back, the file is going to save back right next to the other one. So I told you about shortcuts, how to find all these shortcuts. There's a couple of, let's see, pretty important shortcuts if I can remember where they were here. Let me just go. Okay. Yeah, those. Okay, I'm looking at this picture here, and I want to zoom around. There's some little things over here on the right hand side. If I want to zoom in and out on this picture, okay, I'll hit Command. I typically use Command plus to zoom in, or Command minus to zoom out. So I do that a lot. Those two shortcuts are important to know. So if I'm trying to do some detail work, I might zoom in, Command plus like that, or it's Command minus to go zoom out. Now that's one way of doing it. You'll see down below here, it'll tell you that the zoom, I'm at 12.5% right now, down below. So those two little shortcuts are important. The other thing to know is let's say I want to zoom into 100%. If I double click on that little microscope, double click on it, I'm at 100%. Okay, all right. If I option, it turns, if I do a little plus sign, it'll go in. If I do hit the option key or the alt key, depending on what you're using, Mac or not, it goes to a minus sign, so I can go back out again. So using that little microscope, double click goes you to 100%. If I move it out now, you see the plus sign, I can go in further. Or if I hit the option key, I can go out. Okay. If I want to go, say I'm at 100% and I want to go back to full screen again, jump right back to full screen. this little hand tool right here, if I double click on the hand tool, it takes me back to full screen. Okay, and these things are important to know because if you're, you know, if you're working in there and you want to jump back to full screen, back to 100%, it's easy enough to do, just going back between these two little tools. Okay, so that's, and the other thing that's important to know is if let's say I'm doing some work at, oh heck, 100%, I'm doing some work over here in this area here. And I want to move I want to move the picture around, okay? If I hold down I'm doing something with one of these tools. Let's say I'm not going to tell you what this tool is. Emily's going to tell you. I'm doing something with this tool here, and I'm down here, and I want to move it over to do it more over this way here. If I hit down the Shift key, it turns to a little hand. Now I'm in that tool. I can move it over to I want to and keep on working. Shift key, work. You know, Shift key, work. So I can be doing things with a Shift key, you know, by using the Shift key and moving around. So that's basically, if you're in the midst of all this thing, hold down that Shift key and it'll turn to a little hand, and then you can move the thing around wherever you want. Let's see.
Did you learn all this just by playing with it for years?
Well, yeah, years, and it's yeah. there are lessons and stuff out there, but it's just there's a lot of ways of doing these things. The other one is Control 0 and Control Z. Control 0, Control 0. That goes back to full screen also. So if I want to see everything on the screen, just Control 0 will do it too, or Command 0 if you're on a Mac.
0, the number.
I'm sorry. Yeah, the number.
Number 0. Okay.
So number 0. So if I'm going to double click on this little magnifying glass. Now I'm at 100%. I want to go back to full screen. I'll go to Control 0. Sorry. Whoops. Hit the wrong thing. Cancel. Control 0 and 0 number. Mm-hmm. Yeah. So those are little shortcuts that are sometimes useful. If you don't know them, these shortcuts that I'm going to give you are common on all applications. If you use Word, you use help PowerPoint, you use anything. Command A or Control A is select all. Control C is copy. Control V is paste, and Control Z is back up. So if I go to, see this history here? Remember the history? If I do Control Z, it backs up on the history. I'm just doing Control Z. So if I want to go, if I went down here and I did some stuff and I don't want to do those spot healing things I just did, I can either look at the history panel and go back to the original picture myself, or I can just hit Control Z a couple of times. Command Z goes Control Z, 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 and I'm back to the beginning. So those are quick and easy shortcuts. I recommend learning those because they do make life easier when you're trying to get around. Let's see if there's anything else here. Well, I was going to tell you too, I guess the other thing that's important to know on these menus on the side over here, say for example, this adjustments menu up here, or the properties menu, it doesn't matter. Any menu you're on has a little hamburger menu over here. It's called a hamburger menu. That little line, it just looks like a hamburger, top bun, bottom bun, and middle thing. That comes out and gives you options for that menu. So for example, I go to the properties panel and hit the menu, it's going to be different than if I go to the libraries menu and hit they give me different options depending on what menu I'm on, okay? And for example, if I go to actions, these are actions here. It has a hamburger menu too, and gives me some options for the but someday we'll have to get into this is another interesting area. I have to think about all these actions over here. There's ways of creating your own actions and automating Photoshop, but that's a whole different workshop. So there's these little hamburger menus, for example, layers over here. If I do a hamburger menu on that, new layer, you know, collapse. There's the convert to smart object, things like that. So there's some things over here that are important. Now that we said smart object, I'm going to do one other thing. I'm going to come into, going to go to Lightroom here first. Going to go to the develop module and make some adjustments to this particular picture. It's a pretty bad picture, but I'm going to hit auto adjust it. Let's do that. Okay, highlights down, shadows way up, exposure. I'm making some adjustments on purpose here. So I'm going to say I want to go do something in Photoshop with it. Okay, so I'm going to go back to the library here. Here's the picture I'm on. I remember before I could right click on it and open it, edit in Photoshop, right? And I showed you how to do edit in layers in Photoshop. There's one other way you can do it. If it's a raw picture like this one here is, okay, I could go to edit in, bring it in as a smart object in Photoshop. Why would I want to do that? Well, what's interesting, you saw I did some edits in Lightroom. Maybe I'm going to edit this as a smart object in Photoshop, which means it's going to bring it into Photoshop with those edits so I can go back and look at it in Photoshop. So here it is, edited. I know it's a smart object because it has this little icon down below. The other photo I opened before, this one here, doesn't have that little icon down here in the corner. This one's a smart object, it does. So what does that mean? If I take this image and I double click on it, it opens in Camera Raw, you know, Adobe Camera, and look at the adjustments are here that I put. The adjustments I did in Lightroom are there. Okay, if I don't have it as a smart object, okay, let's say, see now I can do some more adjusting on it here. If I don't have it as a smart object, let's go to the other one here. Whatever adjustments I did in Lightroom aren't here. Okay, if I go now to Filter, Adobe Camera Raw, they're all centered out. There's no adjustments here. So the advantage for a raw file of opening it as a smart object is you can bring over Lightroom's adjustments and readjust them if you want to. Okay, you don't have to do that either. But that's just saying, as long as there's different ways of opening it, one way is open as a smart object. So I will get rid of that. Cancel. And we will go back to back to this thing here. Go back to this image here. This one's not a smart object. It's just a flat, but you'll notice it says background layer here, the word background, and there's a little padlock right here. Same thing with the other one I opened. This doesn't say background layer. There's no padlock because I opened it as a smart object. I can edit this layer. If you get into Photoshop and you start trying to edit this thing, you might run into some trouble. Because this little locked layer here limits what you can do with this. For example, I cannot move this layer to another place. If I were using layers, I could move it around. There's certain things I can't do with this layer. Let me see if I try to go to image adjustments. Let me just see if this works. Yeah, it'll allow me to do layers. It will allow me to do that. So I can do some adjustments, but if you're having trouble, look to see if you're working on a background layer. There's two ways of getting rid of that. One is click on the little lock here and unlock it. I just clicked it and unlocked it. Now you can do anything to that layer you want. Or let me go back to history here, make layer, go back to open. Now it's locked again. So that's how you use the history. I went back. I mean, the other thing you can do is just do a, here's another shortcut for you, Command J. I just copied that layer. Now, what the advantage of doing that is I got this bottom layer that sits there, the original layer, and I'm working on the second layer up. So I'm just doing that. I typically start off that way, with just copying the layer. Go ahead, question? Question? Nope? Okay. So anyways, that is, just to start off, you'll notice the background layer, and there's a reason for that little padlock, because I'm telling you, if you're having trouble doing some edits and stuff, look there, you may be working on a background layer, and there's certain things you can't do, okay? So that might be your trouble. So here we are sitting here with this image here. Let's just go through some of these menus like I started to here with Photoshop. We talked about this file one is interesting. For example, there are certain scripts or automate. So for example, I can create if I have a bunch of files open, I can create a PDF document with all those files in it, pictures. So if I wanted to send somebody a PDF document with a bunch of pictures in it, I can do that. Go down to File, Automate, PDF. There's also some other things down here. You probably merged HDR Pro. You know, Photoshop has its own HDR program. I don't like it, but there it is. So there's some things there. Let's see. That's not going to be too much here. You can export. Typically, you just say File. You'll go Open File and then File Save. Yeah, most of these things I won't use. Usually, when I go to File, it's usually to Open or Save. It's one of these two. On Edit, okay. Edit, you'll do a lot of the transform tools. So if I wanted to do some warping on this picture, since this is this picture here is, you can use these things to you know, do some really strange warping on you know, you can really warp things around if you want and do some really strange things. So this is the transform tools. Now again, I can go back to the history layer and undo what I did here. Come on. Oh, I have to, sorry, the check mark has to be, if things aren't, if after you've done a transform tool and nothing's happening, if you haven't checked the little check mark up here, it ain't gonna happen. So you have to commit it or uncommit it. I just committed that thing. Now I don't want to really do that. I'm just gonna go back to layer via copy. So here are your transform tools, free transform, scale, rotate, flip vertically, flip horizontally, you know, flip the thing horizontally if you want. There's all sorts of things you can do there with the edit transform tools. That's about all I use there. Let's see, that is about all that. The transform tools is what I usually use there. Some of this stuff is really fun, content aware scale and stuff. We're not gonna get into some of that stuff's pretty fancy. Well, that's for a later class. So edit, transform, image. There's a lot of adjustments here. All the adjustments that you see over here on the right-hand side are up here and under adjustments here. Why would I want them here? Well, maybe I don't want to work with layers, right? Maybe I just want to work with this particular image here. So I can do some editing right here. For example, I can go to levels. This levels tools is very much like Lightroom, where you have brighten or highlights, shadows, color balance. So if I go to this thing here, for example, and this is the black side, I can bring up the blacks. I can do the same thing with the whites here. I can change the overall exposure in the middle, or I can use these little drops over here. This isn't really a good image, unfortunately, to demonstrate these droplets here, but this is going to look for the black point in the picture, the blackest part. This I say is going to be the whitest part. And this middle one gives me color balance. I look for something that's neutral gray and gives me color balance. Okay, so that, I mean, these three tools here are really, I mean, powerful tools. They're almost better than Lightroom in the levels. This levels tool is probably the oldest tool in Photoshop. But if you want to get interesting in let's say cancel here, try see if this does anything different. If I go to layer.
You started out an image for that one?
Yeah, image adjustments. This is going to be a problem.
And, a shortcut for levels is Control L.
Yeah, well, you can see the shortcut right up here. See the Control L up here? Yeah, so they're all shortcuts. Now I just did levels here on this image, and it's not going to be too much difference. But I take this little gray thing, and I can click around and try to see what it does to color balance. You can really screw up color. Oh, the reason it's not changing it. It's because this is a smart object. All right, I'm going to do something here. Second. Smart objects are cool, except you can't do certain things to them either. Yeah. So we'll do layer, rasterize smart object. Now I can go to image adjustment level. Now if I go click around this, it should change the white balance on this picture, depending on what I change, right? So that little center one there is a really good white balance tool. So if you want to get white balance right, find a neutral gray. If you want to get the blacks and whites right, find the darkest spot somewhere and black and white. And the other way to do that is if I hit down the Option key or Alt key, you'll see that this says reset. This goes to reset. So if I say, I really screwed it up, I don't like this, I'll hit that, hit reset. Okay, now I'm back to where I was before. Now I can do is hit down the Option key again and start moving one of these sliders in like Lightroom. I can move this over until I start to see some black spots appear and then back off a little bit. This image is already pretty balanced, but so here's the white spots, back off. Maybe the sun should be blown out a little bit, so I'll leave it like that. So that way I've set the black and white spots using the Option and the sliding. Lightroom is very similar to this in using highlights and shadows and darks and blacks, darks and blacks and whites.
And where was the reset?
So reset, if I hit the Option or Alt, I think if you have a Windows, it's Alt. And then if I hit the Alt key, you'll see that changes. If I hit Alt, it says reset. See, Alt. As soon as every time I hit Alt, it changes to reset. So if I want to reset this thing, I say, oh, I screwed it up. I hit the Alt key, hit reset, and this thing will reset anything I did before I can try it again.
Okay, so Alt on your thing, not Control?
No, this is Alt.
Alt, and then on the screen. Okay.
Yeah, in all of Adobe's products, Lightroom and Photoshop, the Alt key is the magic key. If you want something else to happen, try the Alt key. So it is. I mean, it does it on a lot of things. It's just like this one here. If I hit Alt, it changes that button. If I want to see the whites and blacks on this thing here, I can hit the Alt and start to shift, pull this back and forth, and I can see where the blacks are here. You can see that I can back off until I just have a couple of black points. In photo editing, it's really important to have a black point and a white point. Okay, this picture is sort of well distributed, so I should find another picture that isn't, that has the histogram. You see the reason I don't have the histogram over here? Because I don't need it. It's right here. So this particular tool here is one of the most powerful tools you're going to have in Photoshop, or Elements, or anything else. To me, there's a big brother of this one. Once you've got it to where you want, hit OK and commit it. Okay. There is a big brother of this one here. I'm going to go to Image Adjustments, called Curves, which is very similar. But
that's the histogram, yeah.
Yeah, this is like a histogram, except this one you deal with curves, and the typical curve you want is a nice gentle S curve. But I can do things like, do you crazy with it, right? I mean, I can do all sorts of crazy stuff with this curve, depending on what I want to do. So the curves are pretty neat because they allow you to do some really crazy stuff. And there's crazy stuff you can do with curves. And just like the other one, if I hit Alt, I can reset the curve to a straight line. Okay. But if I just want to brighten something up, typically I can just pull up the middle of the curve there. I'll do that a lot of times when I'm trying to do some dodging and burning, but that's another lesson. Or if I want to darken it, I can pull the middle of the curve down. Okay. That's the big brother of levels. So going back to Image Adjustments, Levels, Curves. Exposure is what you think it is. It's exposure. Vibrance is what it is. So there's some of these things you'll see in Lightroom: hue, saturation, color balance. We just did color balance using levels, but we can also do color balance here. Photo filters, just like you think too, if you're putting a filter on your camera, warming filters, things like that. So if I click on and off the preview, you'll see that it shows me what it does. So I can make this, I'll make it denser so you can actually see it. So there's the warming filter, and there's the warming filter off. So I'm going to cancel out of that. What else do we have up here? Image Adjustments, warming filter, color lookup. Oh, that color lookups are things I talked about in the last workshop. They're called LUT tables, but we'll talk about this, an advanced thing. Invert, you can invert, posterize, gradient, shadows, highlights, desaturate. There's a good black and white filter in here. This black and white's nice. It's not a bad way to do your black and whites, because I can take certain colors and adjust, you know, the tones on these things to make it, you know, I can do different things. Let's see. Well, if I want to look at sort of a sepia look to it. So you can start playing around with, you know, sepia looks. Hell, I can make it blue look. So this is sort of a sepia look here. So this little black and white isn't a bad tool here, because it allows you, once you change it to black and white, to start the clouds in the background. I can start fooling around with the sky to make it darker or lighter. And you get a nice little effect at the end of it, which is pretty cool. But you see everything's being done on this one layer here. Okay, if I wanted to back up, I guess go back to history again. I can back up to any one of these points here, all the way back to when I first had the image. I'll just go back to the very beginning.
One real handy thing in images, if you have a color that's just off and you've tried every trick that you know, if you go into images, and sometimes if you hit auto color,
right here,
it'll just fix it. Sometimes it won't, you know, but it's worth a try.
Well, all three things, these things are all worth a try. Yes. So I can do auto tone, which is sort of the levels deal, or the curves thing. So auto tone didn't seem to do much to that. So auto tone didn't do too much. Let's see. I know what I want to do. Let me go back. The reason it didn't do too much is that's a smart layer again. I should get rid of that darn smart layer. Let's go back to the other one. This one here. Let's go to image auto tone. Okay, it did a little something. I can go image auto contrast, see what it does there. It didn't do much. Image auto color. Yeah, it didn't do too much there. But you notice the history over here is building. See, that just told what I've done. I can do some different things. For example, if I go to, I won't get into that because Emily's going to talk about some of these tools. Let me stay here with this. These are image adjustments. We talked about the auto ones here. Down here, image, these are important too. I'm going to share and learn, and I want to give Kathy a different size image. And I don't have Lightroom. Lightroom will do this too. But say I come in here, I do image size, and now you notice, Emily, this opened on the other screen. I dragged it over. That's why you saw me drag it over. When it happens to you, just drag it back over to this other screen.
Okay.
So now if I want to send this to Kathy for share and learn, I can say, hey, I don't need that resolution to be any more than 100. And I don't need this to be in pixels. I'll make this 1,000 pixels across, okay? And since this is locked, it's going to keep the same aspect ratio. And then it'll go down to that size, right?
I've been doing it to 72. Is it?
Oh, 72 is fine. 72 is fine. 100 is fine. But it's something like that. So that way when I do this, I do that. Now it's created a smaller image. Now if I do file save or save as, I'd probably do save as and put that on. I'd say save as, and then I would say go back over here. Save on my computer. It keeps on going over to the other screen. Come on, there we go. Save it. I can say, okay, I'm going to send this to Kathy. I'll put it on my desktop. I want this to be a JPEG file, and save it. You know. So now it's saved this thing as a JPEG file, and that's what I would have done. And I go back, undo the size. To go back to auto color. So the size. So I'm going to put the image back to the same size it was before. Second. Cancel. It goes to the other screen and I don't see what's happening sometimes. Go back. You can also increase the size of these images. People are going to tell you Topaz and some of these others are better, and they probably are to some degree, but Adobe has improved their image resizing immensely in the last couple of years. So if I have image size and I want to get bigger than this, I could say, Preserve Details 2.0, I think, is their latest. A second.
On that image to send things to Kathy, You said 1,000 pixels?
Well, yeah, about 1,000, 1,200, 1,500 pixels. Doesn't have to be, you know, 2,000 doesn't have, this is 7,008. It doesn't have to be that big, you know. If
I usually set it in inches. I could do a 10-inch on the longest side.
Yeah, you can do that.
Side and then 72.
Yeah. Because you can see this picture right here in inches is 30 inches by 20 inches at 240. Okay. I don't have to center a file that big. Nobody wants a file that big. That's huge. This is out of a D810 camera, which is a 48 megapixel picture or whatever.
Wow.
So for Kathy, I just go to 100. 72 is okay. But, you know, I usually go 100 here. You know, 10 here is fine, and then whatever. 10 inches in pixels is I don't want to do that. I don't know what 10 inches is in pixels, but I'll sometimes do 1,000, something like that, or 1,200 or 1,500 or something. Okay. So that would be the resizing people. So if I go to images here, you have the adjustments. You also have image size, and canvas size is interesting too.
Emily, do you do 10 inches by 6 inches?
In this particular canvas here, it comes up, and
if
I want to put a border on it. If I want to
change
put a border
one
on
dimension,
this thing,
it'll
okay?
proportionately
So I'm just going to
change
say,
the other.
I don't know, 8,000 by 5,200. I don't know, just taking a number. I'm going to click, if I click over here, it's going to resize the image going this way, and it's going to keep this image to the left. I'll resize it in the middle. It's going to put the border all the way around it. So if I do that, I want the color to be background. It says background color right now. If I go down here below, the color is it's dark gray. It looks like dark gray is okay with me. I'll keep it that way. Or I can say make it white. Okay. So now I'm going to resize the image with a white border around it. Okay. I'm going to do Command 0 to show you what it is. So now put a white border around my image. Looks like an old-fashioned photograph. So that, you know, you can do it that way. And I'm sure that Emily will show you how to do it with a crop tool also, because you can crop out a border and create it bigger. So that's, so the resizing under imaging, you've got the adjustments, you've got the auto business, you've got the image size and canvas size. Rotation, you can rotate this thing around if you want to. Not sure why you'd want to do that. There's some things you do with apply image, but it's probably a little more advanced than here. Layers, we won't get into that. That's a whole different class. Type, we won't get into that. Selections, Emily will get into selections when she starts talking about tools. The one that's the best in the world is the select subject. She'll get into that. Filters are cool. Now, filters are a lot of nice things. Remember Lightroom. The most useful filter to me right here is Adobe Camera Raw filter. That's Lightroom, basically. So if I take this picture here and go to, I want to do a bunch of stuff to this picture here. For example, I'd like that blue sky, but I'd like to make the sky bluer, right? There's some detail in there. I'll go to, what I'll typically do is go to Adobe Camera Raw. Let's see, bring it up to Adobe Camera Raw. There it is, Camera Raw. So now I'm in Adobe Camera Raw. I'm going to go to make that sky. This is something I tend to do. Let's see, color mixer.
This was in filter.
Blues. Okay, bring some blues back in that sky. Okay, so I brought some blues back in the sky. Now I can go back. Said okay. Now I can go back, and this will take me back to Photoshop with the bluer skies. Boom. Okay, now I've done it. So, and I want to do. It's a lot easier to go back and forth that way. There are ways of doing it in Photoshop. But why you would want to do it in Photoshop, I don't know. It's so darn easy to run over to Adobe Camera Raw and get it done. Yeah. I think, Emily, you use Adobe Camera Raw all the time for stuff, right?
Yeah.
So that to me is the filters. That's the most useful one there. There's a lot of other filters here. The blur filters are pretty good. There's a sharpening filter in here. Unsharp mask is probably the default best one to use. There's some stylization things here. Oil painting. I want to turn that into an oil painting. I can do that. So it's pretty cool. What other? There's something called displace I use a lot to do reflections in the water to make the reflections have ripples in them. So there's a lot of good things. This blur filter is pretty good too. So that
there's a new,
and I'm going to show you one thing just for the
camera blur.
All these images I've showed you edited the whole image here. There are ways of editing just part of the image. I'm going to do a real quick selection using a very simple tool called the marquee tool up here. Okay, if I just do a select a piece of that image there, so what I did is I just took that marquee tool and dragged it across. Now again, I'm just take something real simple here. I'm going to use a brush, and I'm going to use a red color just for the heck of it. You don't have to learn these, but if I start to draw on this picture, second, it went back to red color. Darn it. Oh, I see what I'm doing here. Brush, 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 red. Okay, but if you see, if I draw outside, nothing happens. If I draw there, so whatever, if you want to do a selective part of the image, and you're using this kind of technique, whatever you have selected is where your edits go. For example, if I wanted to just I'm not going to get into this too much, but if I wanted to, let's go. Just do something real quick here. Just do a silly quick edit in the foreground here. If I now go to image adjustments, levels like we did before, you see it's a different histogram, but I can lighten that foreground up just because I've selected the foreground and nothing else. So if you want to select a piece of the image to edit, Emily will get into selections. You can do either the whole image or piece of the image. So that's that. Go back to open the picture. So that these adjustments up here are typically the whole picture unless you've got something selected. Now, why is that important? If you're trying to do something on a picture and you forgot, and you've got a little selection going over here that you forgot about, okay? And you're trying to do something on the picture over here, and it's driving you nuts because nothing seems to happen. It's because something in your picture is selected. And if something's selected, that's where the edit's going to be. So I could be over here doing whatever I want, and I can't get it to work. I'm using two different tools, and nothing's working over here. It's because this thing's selected over here. And it will work over here, fine. It just won't work anywhere else. So the selection is important to doing a spot edit versus a full edit.
How do you get rid of that?
You see, those are all that. It's just filters. Blurring is important. Sharpen, we did. 3D, you'll never get into. Viewing, zooming in and here's some of the shortcuts that are zooming in and out that I told you about before. Okay. Window, that's where all these things over here are. The stuff that you want to add back and forth. Are you guys all going to sleep yet?
Nope.
Because I'm going to give it to Emily.
Okay.
Emily, turn your mic on.
Okay.
Are you on?
I don't hear you. Now I'm a virgin screen sharer, so okay. Bear with me here.
I know why.
See. And I'm going to do screen one. Share.
I got it.
Okay. Can you see a horse?
Oh, just a second. Let me stop sharing here.
A horse with no name?
Yes.
Oh, there we go.
Okay. I've opened up a couple of
it's not in the desert
pictures already, just so I could show you a few things. This menu on the left has 10 million tools on it, and we aren't going to get even to a part of them today. But if you don't want this long tool menu, there's a couple of little teeny tiny arrows up here, and you can click on that and it'll make it a little fatter so that if you like the look, it's whatever. And then another thing is that you'll notice that a lot of these tools have little tiny triangles in the corner. That means there are other tools hidden underneath them. And the easiest way is to either click on that little diamond, or you can right click and it'll show you what's hidden for you to choose. Okay. So this first tool up here is just the move tool. And say I had zoomed in and I was working here, it's just a move. So you can, if you click on it and whoop.
Oh, handle. Yeah.
Wait a minute. Let me go to a different picture and let's just well, the move tool allows you to move whatever you've selected. And the one thing about it is that if you have, I'm going to use that nasty word, layers. If you have 14 layers with a bunch of different pictures all over your canvas, when you use the move tool, normally these tools that are on here will only work on the active layer. You have to have clicked on the particular layer before it'll work. But with the move tool, if you have 14 things here and you hover over, say this bird was on a different layer, you can hover over it, click on it, and it takes you to the correct layer and moves it. Yeah, and then you can move it. So the move tool is kind of multi-talented.
But is it only to use on layers? What else do you do with it?
Yes.
Well, if you, well, let me just show you. I'm going to just very quickly.
Select the bird. Yeah, there.
Select this guy, and now I'm going to go to move, and I can just, whoops. Oh, it's a background layer.
Background layer. See, that's right.
Okay, I'm going to do Control J.
Okay.
Anyway, so now you can see that there's a square around it, and now I can move it.
Reason, yeah.
You know, to wherever I want. All right. And that was a selection, and it copied it. But let me back up because I'm getting ahead of myself here. I'm going to do Control Z. I want to move these things out of my way. Okay. The first thing I do when I open something is do Control J, and now you'll see I have 2 layers, and I can do whatever I want with this layer. Okay, because you'll notice that last one, it wouldn't let me do it.
So it's background.
Since we're not doing layers, this is confusing me.
A layer, think of a whole bunch of sheets of clear plastic, and you're going to draw something. Say there's a picture on the bottom one, and you put 1 sheet of clear plastic or 1 layer on it, okay? You're going to draw on that clear plastic, and how much you see depends how much you put on that clear plastic.
Okay.
You know, like for instance.
Let's not get too far into that.
Yeah, okay, anyway.
Yeah, I don't want to do, we were going to do layers later.
But just assume that as soon as you open it, you're going to do, and it says layer 1. It's layer 1 in this point is a copy of background. And so you can double click and you can say background copy.
Yeah, Ellen, remember she started.
And usually it will, if it's not the background, it'll say copy of whatever.
Ellen, when she started off, she had trouble doing something on that layer. She tried to move something, and the reason she had trouble is because see that little lock?
Because it's locked.
It's locked. And that's typical. When you open Photoshop, it comes in with a locked layer. So if you're going to do something and you can't get it done, and it won't work, it's because you're working with a locked layer. So you got to either click the little lock to unlock it, or you've got to do what Emily did, was copy it to another layer.
I'm sorry, where's the lock?
It's right that little, see that little, on the layer menu, there's a little, like a picture of a lock. And if you click on it,
and now she can
do it. Now is layer 0, okay? But I'm going to undo that with Control Z. And now it's the locked background. Okay.
So what she did is just copied that layer. So
I just copied it so I could work on this one. It's the same as working on this one.
Unlocked.
But it makes it more flexible.
Yeah.
Okay.
Is it up at the top left? I'm sorry, I'm being really stupid here. I can't find see the little lock.
Okay. Do you see my mouse?
Yes.
Okay, we're going over to the right. And here is the layers menu. This one says background.
Okay, I think it's covered up.
And it's over to the right.
Okay, it's covered up with the people. That's why I couldn't see it.
Oh, I moved my people, so.
Okay, okay, that's why I'm just looking all over the place.
Okay, you might want to hide that because I'm going to be using this quite a bit. And I use histograms a lot, you know, and
Okay.
so I have my histogram up here.
Okay, I hit everybody.
And these are all various kinds of tools that are similar to Lightroom. Okay, brightness, contrast, curves, vibrance.
Those are for using
are here, but if you use them here, it will be added as a layer above your.
Yeah, let's not get into layers. That's why I avoid that.
So I'm not going to go into those. The ones I'm going to hit are on the left. Now this first move tool has one tool underneath it that you will probably never use. It's an artboard, and it's for people who do like graphics and advertising and stuff, and it will move stuff that you have onto a whiteboard, and you can move them around, and you can say size this for a cell phone or whatever. I have never used it, but it's there. Okay, the next tool that is there is called a rectangular marquee tool, and it's one of a couple. You can go rectangular or you can go elliptical, and what these do is they make a selection for you in the shape of what it says, rectangular. Okay, I'm going to come over here, and it made a rectangle. Okay, if you hit Control D, it'll undo your choice. Control D will deselect whatever you selected.
That's a good shortcut to that Control D.
Yeah. Now, if you
so how is that different from Control Z?
Oh no,
Control Z undoes whatever step you just did. So it probably would undo your well, it depends on what you did after you selected.
Yeah, Control D just deselects everything.
Yeah.
Oh, deselects everything.
Yeah, just deselects everything.
Everything you've selected, it undoes it. Okay.
Okay. Thank you.
All right. Now, if you don't want a rectangle, you want a square, you hold your Shift key down, and then you get a square.
Okay.
Okay. So that selects as a square. So let me deselect that. Underneath this choice is an elliptical marquee, and it does, if you an ellipse. Okay. Or if you want a circle, hold your Shift key down and you get a perfect circle. Okay, any questions?
Now, how do you move that circle around?
You go to your if you just move the circle, if you just go to the move thing, it's going to move whatever's in your circle.
Don't you?
Okay. You can go to select, and you can say modify. Wait a minute. Select. Where are we? Modify the border, and then you can change it, or you can wait a minute. I've forgotten. Let me think. Select. Oh, you can put grow. You can modify it.
Emily, the way I've done it all the time, if you hit the space, do the circle, hit the space key. You know, start drawing the circle, hit the space key, and then with the space key still held down, you can move that circle around.
Oh, with space key.
Yes.
Okay. All right. Thank you. I didn't even know that.
Yeah. So
we learn.
The space key will help you move it around and stuff.
Yeah. So then when you get it like you want, then you can do whatever you want.
And you can let go of it, sort of in the space.
Okay.
But it doesn't do content aware. So like if you wanted to move it up there in the gold and stuff, it'll just put water around up there.
That's a different. That's a different. Okay. So I'm going to go to my history, and I'm going to.
So really, you want to make a really tight circle, or a tight rectangular?
Well, no, that is actually for selecting a circular thing or a square thing.
Yeah, if you want what you selected to be in the shape of a square, then you use that. Or in the shape of a circle or an ellipse, then you use that. If you want it in the shape of what you're looking at, that's a different tool.
Okay, we'll talk about that later then.
Yes.
Yeah, that's the next tool we have is also a selection tool. It's got 3 under it. The first one is called the lasso tool. And this kind of makes what you kind of just fat finger and draw a line around whatever it is that you want. But it's all dependent on how smooth you do this. And when you let go, when you get to the end, you now have that selection, okay? It's not perfect, you know, because there's a lot of water around the bird. It's not great, but for a quickie thing, hang on. Anyway, so that's that. Then also, that's the lasso tool, just for a quick grab. Then there's a polygonal lasso tool. I used this a lot the other day because I was modifying a photograph of one of my sister's sculptures, and she had all these little triangle pieces on it that had fallen off, so I was making new ones. So I needed a triangle shape. So if you click it however many sides you want, when you go back to the beginning, you end up with that. So I was doing triangles, but it's straight edges. Okay, so if you have something with a straight edge that you want to move, say a building, you can just click around the building, and when you get back to the beginning, then you've got your selection. Okay?
I didn't even know that was there.
Yeah, it's handy. And then another thing under here is the magnetic lasso tool. Now this one, I'm going to zoom in a little bit, click plus, and then I'm going to move over. Okay. The magnetic lasso tool. Oh, wait a minute. I can't do it because I've got to select my background. See, it wouldn't let me do it. Did you see the circle? It wasn't going to let me do it because there was no layer selected. Okay. Now this, if you click kind of close to your critter, it'll kind of follow. You know, it'll magnetically get close to whatever it is you do. But it you know, it has issues, and you have to be, you know, it's kind of hard. But it kind of sticks magnetically to your subject. Okay, and when you get back around to the end, then it'll be selected. Okay, so that's magnetic selection tool. And I'm going to
garbage tool.
Okay. However, we have this brand new.
That's new. That's good.
This is a wonderful new tool. And this is called Object Selection Tool. Watch what happens when I can just draw a square around this dude. And when I let go, boom.
Ah.
Okay. It's not perfect. You'll see in here.
Yeah.
And here. Yeah. But once you've got your basic thing selected, they have this thing up here. Oh, get out of there. Select and mask. And where did it go? What is this? Oh, this is my screen sharing thing. Let me grab this thing.
While she's doing that.
I'm in select and mask. Okay.
Okay, Ellen, you had a question, Ellen?
Go ahead. You had a question?
I'm sorry. I made everybody go away so that I could see that right sidebar, which now you're not going to use very much. And now I can't find everybody. How do I get everybody's picture back?
I'm waving.
No, I can't. There's nothing.
You can't see the bar.
No, I can't see the people. I can't
maybe
see
behind your other screen.
No, she can.
I made everyone go away over on the right.
Yeah, but if you minimize it.
Yeah, go look down on the bottom of your screen. You may have the little line like you've minimized the.
I have participants, chat. Oh, wait a minute.
Participant.
No.
Look, are you seeing yourself at the bottom, Ellen?
Pardon me?
Do you see yourself?
No, I don't see anybody.
Do you see a box that shows who is talking at the time? It would say talking Tim Sullivan.
Probably not.
It's at the top right. Talking Ellen, Talking John, Talking
Yes,
Evelyn.
there's 4 little boxes above
There it
that.
is.
That's your view choices.
I found you.
Okay. So
Okay, sorry.
click on, because I want to modify my selection. Now, the first thing I'm going to do is over here on the view, they have something called onion skin. And if I click that, then it will, did I lose my selection? I think I did.
Yeah, I don't see the selection.
Yeah, it's not in there. The dots aren't there.
Yeah, go
The
back.
dots aren't there.
Yeah, let me go back.
And the tools down the left are not, there they are.
I'm back to my picture. Okay.
Oh, you have a selection.
And I'm going to go to select and mask up here. Okay. That's going to allow me to refine. Okay. Now,
well, the reason you don't see anything,
yeah.
you have a mask, you have a layer underneath it, Emily. That
oh, that's right. Let me.
Do a different one. Use black or red or something like that. You'll show it fine.
Yeah. Okay. This has different things. Onion skin will put a kind of a checkerboard thing behind your selection so that you can see how you're doing, and you can make it darker, lighter, so that you can refine your selection better. There's also marching ants, which you're familiar with, okay? And there's an overlay where you can see, I don't know if you can see, but there you can see that the wingtip here is not selected and some of his toenails are clipped. And then you can put it on black or on white, or have a black and white selection that helps you pick whatever is easiest for you to see.
And that all came from that select and mask at the top?
Yeah. So I wonder what this unlayers, I don't know what that does.
Well, that's the bottom layer. You have 2 layers there. It's the same as the
Oh,
other.
yeah. Okay. That was silly of me. Anyway, so.
No, losing people was silly.
I'll tell you what, let me go back.
The red mask looks fine.
I'm going to just hide this layer. If you, this eyeball, you can hide any layer, you won't see it, okay? So now we're going to go back to selecting mask, and now you can see the onion skin. And you can make it lighter so you can actually see the picture, or as dark as you need to do what you want to do. So I would leave it like maybe right here, so I can kind of see that wingtip. And then you can, I don't want to go too far into how to adjust it, but they do have things called Smart Radius, and you can take a brush, and these brushes on the left are similar to ones that are present on that menu in regular Photoshop. There's Quick Select, Refine Edge, Brush, Lasso, all of those things. So I'm just gonna, as long as I keep the plus in the circle outside of the bird, now it's cleaning up that water that was selected before. And I can do that here. Okay, so if I say, okay, now you can see that that water that was selected here is no longer selected. So that this select and mask, I could go into it for an hour. So I'm not going to, but that is one way to modify when you don't get a perfect selection on some of these really wonderful masking tools like this one. Okay.
Okay, and then what do you do with this once you've selected it?
Well, it just depends on what you want. I can say Control C, I'll copy it. Control V will paste it. Then I can go to my move tool and, whoops, wait a minute, I'm not on my move tool. I'm on here. Now I'm in my move tool and I can move it around or do whatever I want with it. Okay. But it's now on another layer of its own. Okay. But we're gonna go back to here. Okay, so I'm gonna deselect, I want to show you some more of these selection tools. Underneath this is a quick selection tool, okay? And,
Quick, okay.
Quick. And, you know, you can draw, on your guy.
Oh, yeah.
And it'll select it kind of quick if you're kind of in a hurry. And then you can use your bracket key. Your left bracket makes it smaller, and then you can get into these small areas.
Oh, okay.
Yes, okay. So that's another way of selecting. And you can also do enhanced edges and that kind of stuff on it. So I'm going to deselect. Then there's another one called the Magic Wand tool. And the Magic Wand tool, you can pick things by their color. Like if I want the water, and I just swipe here, but you can see that the water is a lot of little different colors. It's not just one solid color. So it hasn't done a very good job selecting it. But I'm going to deselect. But up here, you can say what size, 3x3 average. You can say do a bigger average, 100 by 100. And then when you select it, whoop, it still didn't do it. Okay, you can change their tolerance. The tolerance says how close in color it has to be to what you're selecting. So we'll change from a tolerance of 1 to 100. Okay, whoops, 1,000. That won't work. And now when I select, boom, see it selected most of the water, but it also selected some of these shadows and stuff in here and some of him that I don't want. So you can play with your tolerance. If you look, do a tolerance of 50.
Emily, what this is useful for sometimes is selecting a sky. You have a nice blue sky, and and it goes between trees and stuff. You see the contiguous up there? You can do contiguous or not contiguous. That way you get blue sky that's in between the tree branches and everything else.
And if you have, well, I won't talk about layers, but sometimes you have little things on top of other layers, and you can say, I want you to sample all of the layers when you choose. And there are various reasons for doing it, okay? Or you can say select the subject, whatever.
Well, select subject is
okay. So that is the Magic Wand tool. Any questions so far? Okay. The next tool is your crop tool.
Yeah, Emily, I wouldn't skip over select subject. Just click on that.
What now?
Go to select subject.
Right now?
Yeah, just go take a selection tool. Any of them, doesn't matter, any selection tool. Go to any and then click select.
Go back to select subject.
Well, no, yeah, go ahead, click that magic wand. Now go up above and say select subject.
Oh, select subject.
Boom, you got it. That's it. All right, no more work, done.
Okay. All right.
It just it does everything for you, and it's a really good tool.
Yeah, it's new. It's pretty new.
It's brand new, and it's a
good job. Okay, so we go to the crop tool. You have two ways of cropping. You can either just move these. If you get to the corner, if I can get to the corner. You can zoom in this way and crop it however you want, okay? If you stand outside of the crop, you'll see you get that curved arrow and you can rotate it if you're trying to straighten a horizon or something, and it puts these lines across for you.
There's a little bar up there too for straightening.
Okay, and let's see, escape. Or you can draw your box around what you want to crop. So once you're in the crop tool, there are several ways to crop. And And you can also, up here, if you want to crop 8 by 10 for a photograph, you can put 8 by 10 and it'll do it for you.
Mm.
Okay? Or if you want to reverse 10 by 8, you just click the arrow and it switches, okay? And you can also set the resolution, I think. Can you? I'm trying to remember what this is. Okay, anyway, you'll notice also that this has a triangle, I mean the golden
thirds.
The golden root of thirds right on the cropping tool. So you can move this guy around till it's right there at that magic spot, you know, and use that for now see I'm losing the top of my camera of my picture, but I can shorten it a little, and now he's right at that beautiful spot that you want your subject to be if you're doing the rule of thirds, okay?
And they don't permit, you have to commit above or not. The
okay.
checkbox, the checkbox or the unchecked box.
Okay, and then Control Z will undo it. Okay, this eyedropper tool is if you are, I'm just going to pretend that I want to paint something. And let's say I want to paint something that's the color of this. I can use the eyedropper, and if I click on it, whoops, am I on it? Oh no, that's the paintbrush. Let's go back, eyedropper.
There it is.
If I click on that spot, do you see down here? That means that these two boxes are the outline and the fill of anything you paint with or your text or whatever. The fill has now changed to brown. If I click here, it's now blue. So if I wanted to paint something a certain color, you could add that would match my photograph. I can use the eyedropper, okay? So that's what it does. Okay, now the next tool here is called a spot healing brush. And say, oh, I just wanted water. You can just, you know, paint over this dude. And after, sometimes you have to do it several times when it's a large thing like this.
You have it on light mode is lighten above. You gotta.
I have it on what?
You have lighten above. Do normal mode above.
I have content. Oh, thank you. Okay, let's go back to Mr. Bird. And now
should work.
I can just. It's still not doing a good job.
Oh, because it looks like your
content aware. Proximity match. What did I do?
It looks like you have it's transparency on somehow. I don't see the transparency. She'll look at mine here. Yeah, content we're pressing match samples all layers. Normal.
Let's see.
Tim, you always
let me pick a smaller. Let me pick a smaller spot. Say I don't want his feet.
Wait, there's some dirt in the water.
Yeah. and you can change from normal to replace. Okay. And now he's gone. You know, whatever you.
It's making a mess of it.
It's not perfect, and you have to choose. You can choose your brush how hard you want. If you do a hard brush, all the way over to the hardest, then you're going to get these circles that are a lot more obvious, you know, than not. So hang on, let me back up to where I was.
You got on mode replace too. I don't know what the.
Yeah, I changed that. And you can do luminosity. There's all, but I usually go with normal.
Yeah, normal's all I hit, yeah.
Okay. Underneath the spot healing brush is the, come on. I don't know why I'm having trouble picking. Okay. And with this brush, you have to select, it's almost like cloning. If I click here and then I erase, I can erase, you know, and then I can keep selecting different areas. When you see that little target, that's where it's going to kind of copy from. Okay, so that's a different way of getting rid of stuff that you don't like. This one, you can draw around the thing you want to eradicate. And then you click on it and drag it over to what you do want there. And when you let go, it's there. Did you get that?
No.
Okay, it's called the patch tool. And the first thing it does is you draw around what you want to remove. Okay? Now, when I move it to a different area, it will pick whatever I stop on. If I put it over here, it's going to put that in there. But I don't want that. I want water.
Oh, I see.
Okay.
Okay. Yeah, I see now.
Okay, so that's the patch tool. You get to select where it picks from to replace it.
That's easier than doing that one before where it just smeared it.
Sometimes. Okay. All right. So now this is a new tool that I had to look up because I didn't know what it was. This is a content aware move. Content aware is, are y'all familiar with it?
No.
Content aware, when you remove something, the computer becomes aware of the stuff that is surrounding it and replaces it with the same kind of stuff. Let me show you. I want to get rid of this bird. And when I click on it and move it, it will, it's supposed to.
Will eventually. Do the checkbox up above.
Oh, I forgot. Yeah. Whoops, wait a minute. Can't. If you hit the checkbox, then it will look at that bird and remove it. Now your bird's in a new place. Okay, so
that relocates what you got to a different place.
Yes,
okay.
Yes. You move it. You want to move it, but you don't want a hole left where you moved it from.
Yeah. Okay.
So
Neat.
It'll fill in your background for you.
Neat.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, I just learned about that one. Thank you, Chuck. What would I do without you? Okay. This tool is a brush tool, and it paints brush strokes. Okay, whatever color you want. The color that'll be on the brush is the one in this upper box. If you click on the little pair of boxes up above it, it'll put as a default black in the middle and white on the outside. Or you can hit this arrow and it'll put white in the middle and black on the outside.
Or you can use D, and it'll go to default. And,
yeah.
And X will toggle.
Yes. So let's say we want to paint white for whatever reason, or you can, when you click on this, here's where you can pick a color if you want, and you say, okay, now it's that brown color. I want to paint some brown around here for whatever reason. I can go to here and I can choose all different kinds of brushes.
Mm.
You know, whatever shape. Like this is actually it's called a all-purpose brush. But if I click, Wait a minute. Why isn't it doing it? I don't know. Let me go to another one. Here's a splatter brush. And you can see I'm just splattering. Or I can go to Impressionist brush. And oh, it seems to be in the wrong color.
Well, some of these brushes come with their presets, so you have to go into the brushes panel.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
All right.
I was going to make a comment. A lot of you who don't do graphic design, all this kind of stuff, are probably wondering, what the hell would I want that for?
Yeah.
Well, if you're into Photoshop's built for more than photographers. So there's a lot of tools here that get into things like graphic design and advertising and stuff like that. You know.
Yeah. So anyway, there's a whole slew of different brushes, and if you pick just a circular brush like this, you can pick how hard you want it. If you have all the way hard, let me go back to this. Okay. Oh, am I on the smudge tool? Okay. Okay, here's a soft round, and you'll notice that the edges are blurred, okay? If you go back up here and change to all the way to hard, then you get that. So sometimes when you're painting something, and it may not be paint, it may be something else that you're painting, and I'll go into that later, but this is how you modify the brushes that you're painting with.
And eventually, when we do get into layers, we'll talk about brushes quite a bit.
Yeah, okay. Okay. Now, here is a clone tool. It's almost obsolete these days. But if you want two birds, and they're going to be exactly the same, if you hit your Alt button, that'll pick where you're going to copy from, okay? And you click. Now that's the source for your clone. And if you can take it over here, and you can just move around until you get Mr. Bird copied over here. You can't change the angle he's at. You can't change anything about him. You've just copied him exactly as he is over to a new place. So that's the clone tool.
Clone tool is really good, though, for doing some cleanup and stuff sometimes, too.
It's great for getting rid of zits on faces.
I mean, things like clean up, little things like twigs and branches. I mean, sometimes if the other ones don't work, that works pretty well.
Yeah, and there are options to it. Like if you had several layers, you could say pick them, pick all of them. This is set for a line, okay? So when I move from left to right, the clone tool moves it moves with me, okay? If I didn't have aligned, and now I'm going to pick this guy, and I'm going to pick it, but it doesn't. Let me see. It doesn't go in exactly the same order as what I had chosen. I can't think how to say it. Can you think of a better way to say it?
No, I can't. There's one you can actually flip it so if you have a line and then you can.
There's a line.
So do it backwards. If you wanted the bird to be flying into each other, you could actually do that.
Okay.
I think if you.
All right. So anyway, those are those.
A few more, and you'd have some NC Escher print there. A few more of those birds, and you'd have the M.C. Escher, the famous M.C. Escher print. Anyway.
Yeah.
Hey, just again, checking with people here. We've been going here for 2 hours.
Yeah. Well, I'm gonna just do something real stupid here for now, and this next tool.
I'm sorry. Wait. Which tool were you using just then?
That was the clone stamp tool.
Okay, it looks like a little person. Okay.
No, it looks like those parcel post stamp things. You know, a rubber stamp.
Mm-hmm.
It's for copying stuff. Yeah.
Okay. Now the next tool is called the history brush. Okay. And if you don't change anything, and you've gotten stuff and you don't like what you did, I can change this. Let me change this to big. This brush will take you back to where you started from when you opened up the picture. It'll get rid of all of your stuff that you don't like, but only in the area where you tell it to. You brush on the history. Okay, and what it picks is where you opened it. So you see the little arrow with the brush there? That's what it's using as a reference. Now, let's just say, hang on, let me just collect this. Whoops. And I'm just going to move him over here just for help. Okay. All right. Now, let's say I'm pretty happy with what I've done so far. I'm not, but we're going to pretend that. So, but I want to be, if I screw it up later, I want to be able to go back to this spot. Then you can hit this little camera right here.
Cool.
And it creates a snapshot. And you can go back to that spot instead of all the way back to the beginning with your history tool. Okay?
Yeah.
And you can mark it here. Now you can see, I hit the camera and then I clicked here. So now if I go to the history, it'll go to that spot. If I click it here, then it'll go to that spot. So wherever you want to make sure that you don't lose some of your changes, but you may want to change stuff afterwards, that's a quick way to go back to you know, step 1 or 2 or 3 or 4, as opposed to going down this row, okay?
Is this a good place to stop, Chuck?
Well, I'm just asking you guys, because you're the energy. Yeah. I don't want your energy to go, and want you to have some example.
Can we call it quits here? Or?
My head's about to explode.
Okay. Well, that gets us about halfway through the tools.
Yeah.
And I think that's a good stopping spot.
So what we can do is, you know, just let's take it easy. I mean, that's what I want to do. There's no rush.
I'm going to stop sharing.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, good. No, we already lost a lot of people, so
okay.
And not surprisingly, there's a lot here.
Yeah.
So right. Let's just take it easy. Think of more questions. If you got questions, that's okay. We just think of them, send them to us the next workshop, whatever. I'll put on another flyer, another invitation saying, hey, we'll have Photoshop beginner session 2.
And here's another thing. Is if you have a tool you want to learn, look and see what the name of it is and Google it. And chances are there's a video out there that'll go through it with you.
Oh yeah, there's a lot of that. I mean, that's a good point. There's always something out there. You know, you ask yourself what all these tools are for, and it looks awfully complicated. Photoshop is not a photographer's tool. It is. I mean, you can do photographer's stuff, but it's for a lot of stuff. So you get a lot of crazy tools that you wonder about. You're not going to use them all. You know, you're just not. The ones you're going to use mostly are things like the clone stamp tool and the healing brush to get rid of spots. get rid of branches.
Yeah.
To you know, that kind of stuff. You're gonna most of the adjustments and stuff you do in Lightroom or outside or Camera Raw. When we get into layers, you'll start to see the real power of Photoshop.
And some of those tools, like the healing brush, I find it's really handy for, because I kayak and I get water splashes on my lenses, and then I come back and I've got all these dots all over my pictures. That healing brush is pretty good at getting rid of those. Yeah. So, you know, they all have their uses, and it depends on what you're doing, what it's handiest for.
Yeah, it is. It is. I don't know if any of you saw it. For example, I posted a picture on Facebook the other day of a composite that I did of about 3 or 4 different pictures.
That's great.
I mean, the picture was taken, the original base picture was taken by Kathy's Ditch. Emily, you know where that ditch is out there. There's no lake there with birds in it and stuff like that. But it was a nice sunset that day. So I took the sunset from that area and took a bird from down Lake Houston, and I created the lake just out of creating reflections myself. So, I mean, that's the fun of Photoshop, is you can start doing some stuff like that. And yeah, what do you guys think in terms of timing and how to do this and what's best, what's comfortable, it doesn't drive you nuts? You know, midweek.
Why don't we limit it to 2 hours?
Yeah, I think 2 hours is a good limit. Gives you the flexibility to handle questions in the meantime and cover a lot of material. So that was really good, I thought.
Okay.
I don't mind the 2 hours, but I think at the 1 hour mark, we should take a 5-minute break to stretch our legs.
Okay. Yeah. Well, that's a good point.
Yeah, because you're just sitting here, you know, for 2 hours or longer. Yeah. Stretch of the legs. Yeah. You lose interest after a while.
Well, that's what I'm afraid of. You doze off, and I don't blame you. It's not, I mean, we all do that. We all do that. Yeah. So, we can go on and on.
Yeah, and FYI, I posted on Facebook a shortcut sheet of Photoshop. Yeah. So for Windows and for Mac for all the shortcuts.
Yeah.
Oh, cool.
So you can go get it and print it off.
Yeah,
that's pretty handy. I've been using it for a while.
Yeah, is that on the Facebook Photo
Yeah,
Club?
the Kingwood Photo Club Facebook page. And if you don't see it, just go ahead and send me an email and I'll send you a copy.
What is your email, John?
Photo by job@aol.com.
Photo by job@aol.com. Thank you.
Had that for like 30 years now.
Okay. Sorry about my glitches here, but we all there's so many.
We're all learning.
Well, we can't. You can't go through Photoshop without having glitches. I mean, you feel your mouth feeling better, Emily?
I can feel it now.
Okay.
you didn't drool that we saw.
No, thank goodness. Okay.
Emily and Chuck, that was really great. Thank you so much for all the thought you put into it, and having the gumption to show us live. That was great. Enjoyed it.
You're welcome. You're welcome.
You know, we'll go back, and again, if you have questions, think of the questions and tell us. So we'll try to build that in, whatever. And next time we come back, I'll make another. I don't know. What do you guys think? A week from now or sooner? We're all doing the same thing. Week?
Yeah, week's great.
Okay. Because I'm going to go in and play with a lot of these things.
Okay. Okay.
Yeah. You two are very dedicated, and believe me, it takes a lot to prepare a little workshop.
Hey, Chuck. Yeah. I'm just looking at the calendar here. Yeah. And next week we have the monthly meeting on Tuesday, the photographers lunch on Wednesday, and the SIG on Thursday. You might want to move this to another week later.
Yeah, that's true.
There's 3 things next week.
So I thought this week was busy.
Yeah, next week's busier.
Okay, I thought this week, I have a bunch of stuff going on this week too. So, and they're all Zoom calls. I got a folk meeting tomorrow and things like that. Okay. Yeah. All right. I'll look at it. Look for some empty space. Okay.
Okay.
Okay, good.
I thought this was a good start time too. Kind of well after lunch and before.
Yes.
Yeah. So 1:30 is a good start time. For me anyway. So.
Okay. Yeah. All right.
Yeah.
Okay. Thanks a lot.
Thanks, Chuck.
Thanks, Chuck. Thank you, Emily.
Appreciate it.
Okay.
Bye.
Bye, everyone.